Locksmith Training by locksmithdvd.com. Start cutting high security automotive keys with the Ilco 057 key machine. If you are operating on a low budget, you may want to consider the Ilco 057 manual duplicator to cut high security automotive keys. There are also similar machines from other companies. These manual machines have come down in price and are quite affordable. The Ilco 057 is easy to operate, it's great for duplication, and when combined with the use of space and depth keys, you can also replace lost keys. The major components of the machine, of course, you have the on-off switch here. You have two handles, one on the left and one on the right. The one on the left adjusts the Z-axis or the depth of cut. The one on the right moves the jaw assembly around so that you can trace the pattern of the original key. This is the tracer guide here. Then you have your cutting wheel here. And of course your vice jaw assembly with two jaws. Just like most key machines, you have one jaw for the original key and one jaw for the key that you're cutting. And of course you have your knobs for each of the jaws to lock in the key and the key blank that you're going to cut. On the right side here is a knob that locks the cutting head at the correct depth, and I'll show that again in just a minute. Here's a close-up view of the vice jaw assembly, the cutting guide, and the cutter. This machine will cut both the external track, where the cut is on the outside of the key edge, or it'll also cut for the internal track, where the cut is kind of down the center of the key blank. Notice here, talks about starting point when you want to start cutting the key. You always start on the right. If it's an external cut, you would start back here, and I'll go over this again, go around like that. And then you need to go over it more than once to make sure it's nice and clean. If it's an internal cut, you still start on the right, but you'd be starting up here on the right and coming this way and going around like this. The machine will come with an Allen wrench, tip stop tools, and then spacer tools so that you can adjust your guides and your cutters. It'll also come with a key that you can use to try making keys with the new machine. This is a Honda key here. It's an external high security laser or sidewinder key, as they're often called. Here's a closer look at the spacers. And again, the one that goes on the left is marked with an L. The one for the right side is marked with an R. And the right side is 0.02 of an inch thicker than the one on the left. So it is important to get them in the right location. The machine will come with the T22 guide and the F22 cutting bit. To set the machine up, first, make sure the machine is unplugged. Install the calibration plates into the jaws on the machine, the left on the left, the right calibration plate on the right. Then we have to install the guide on the left side of the cutting head and the cutting bit on the right side. Just turn the shield around so it's out of the way. And go ahead and install the cutting guide on the left side of the machine here. This is only an aluminum housing that holds this, so we don't want to over-tighten this set screw. So here's a picture of the guide just barely touching the spacer. This is how it would look when you tighten the set screw. Okay, put the cutting bit in the jaw on the right and just barely snug it up, just enough to hold the cutting bit there. Go ahead and bring the cutting head down by using the lever on the left side of the machine. Bring the cutting head down just to where the guide just barely touches the calibration key on the left side. Then use the knob on the right side of the machine to lock the cutting head in place. Now we're ready to adjust the cutting bit on the right side. So if you snug that up a little bit, then just release it a little bit. Let the cutting bit come down and rest on that calibration key on the right side. Here's a close-up of both the guide and the cutting bit, just barely touching their spacers. Once it's resting on there, we can go ahead and snug the 2 set screws. Want them good and snug, but we don't want to overdo it. Then you're ready to use the machine. You can go ahead and release the cutting head, take your calibration keys out, and begin using the machine. Be sure to turn the shield back around to the front. You can see here there's 2 spaces to do your tip stop. You want to use the one further back. If the key is a shorter key, you may have to use the tip stop in the front. Here, for example, you can see this key is long enough that it can go in further. So you wouldn't use the close stop for this key. You would move it on further back onto the jaw. You'd move the key up further onto the jaw as far as you could, because one thing is you want to be able to make sure that you can cut all the way back as far as you need to. So it's important to have the key as far forward as possible. Here is a close-up of the key correctly installed. The tip of the key is up against the stop. The stop is correctly placed in the rear slot. Shorter keys may require use of the front slot. Of course, keys with shoulders are gauged using the shoulder of the key. So when you're ready to set your depth, which is set with the handle on the left, you bring up your key that you already have, the one you're going to duplicate. Bring the guide down, and you don't bring it down real hard, you just bring it down so it just barely sits on top of that key cut. And there's a knob on the right here, and you tighten that knob. And once that's done, you should be able to move this fairly easily. You bring it back out, and then you set your key on the right, your new key blank on the right. Now this is a close-up of how the guide should look when you're setting the machine to cut a key. Notice if the guide is down on the cut of the key, it's not on the top of the key. So here's the knob that you turn to lock the machine in for its correct depth right here. And once this is locked, it's a one-hand operation. You just use the handle on the right to guide the key and cut the key. Then once you have that set and locked in, you can turn this shield out of the way again and go ahead and set your blank on the other side. Of course, you'll need to get if it's a tip stop key, put your guide in there, push your key up, tighten down your jaw on that new blank, and then you're ready to cut the key. Now you want to turn your shield back around, and again, they do recommend that you wear safety glasses also when you're using this machine. You always start on the right side. If it's an external key, you start on the right towards the back. If it's an internal cut key, you'll start on the right at the front, but it'll still be on the right side of the cut. So you always start on the right side of the cut. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate this. You brush it off. Also, you want to brush off your key machine after each use. But you can see it cut the key no problem. We just turn the key over. Put our tip stop in. And then we're ready to cut the other side. That's it. We have the key cut on both sides. Here's a closer look at the key we just cut. This is the original here, and this is the one that we cut here. And the machine comes with a little brush, and it's a good practice to always brush away all the chips after each use. One of the features of this machine is you can replace these plates here. If you accidentally do cut into these plates, there's just 4 screws total that hold the 2 plates on, and they're easily replaceable. Now, a couple of other things to be aware of. You cannot cut every key as the machine is set up here. There are adapters that are required for some keys. They're not too expensive, but the adapters are normally purchased separately from the machine. You'll need adapters for the early model Mercedes, the BMW, the VW, the Audi, the Rover, Porsche, the Ford 2-track, and then you're going to need a smaller diameter guide and a smaller diameter cutting bit for the new style Lexus keys. These are space and depth keys for the Honda H001 4-track keys. This set is made by Arrow. There are 6 keys for depths 1 through 6. When using space and depth keys, you can replace a lost key if you know the cuts of the key. How to find the cuts for a lost automotive key are covered in our automotive courses, and I covered the use of space and depth keys in course number 4. There are quite a few manual machines on the market. Many sell between $500 and $1,000. Check with your supplier or do an internet search for sidewinder key duplicator to see what is available. For more automotive locksmith training, go to locksmithdvd.com.